Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Northern Star and watched the stars drift past the main screen. The cargo ship moved through space at a steady pace, carrying what looked like simple supplies to the outer colonies. Jake had been making this run for 3 years now, and to anyone watching, he was just another merchant captain trying to make a living in the dangerous frontier regions. The Northern Star looked old and worn from the outside. Its hull showed scratches and dents from years of travel through asteroid fields and rough landings on primitive planets. The paint had faded in many places, and some of the external panels looked like they needed repairs. Anyone seeing the ship would think it was barely holding together, just another aging freighter struggling to stay in business. Jake walked over to his second officer, Lisa Grant, who was checking the navigation computer. Lisa appeared to be a typical cargo ship officer, wearing simple work clothes and looking tired from the long journey. She had been with Jake for 2 years, and they worked well together. At least, that was what their official record showed. "How are we doing on time, Lisa?" Jake asked, keeping his voice casual. Lisa looked up from her screen and smiled. "We should reach the Kepler sector in about 6 hours, Captain. The cargo manifest shows we are carrying farming equipment and mining tools for the new settlements there." Jake nodded and moved to the engineering station where Danny Rodriguez was working on what looked like routine maintenance. Danny was a big man with oil-stained overalls who always seemed to be fixing something on the ship. He had a reputation for being able to repair anything with whatever parts he could find. "How are the engines running, Danny?" Jake asked. Danny wiped his hands on a rag and grinned. "They are purring like a kitten, Captain. These old engines might not look like much, but they will get us where we need to go. I have been tuning them up during the trip, and they are running better than they have in months." The communications officer, Amy Patterson, sat at her station monitoring the usual space traffic chatter. Amy was young and looked fresh out of the Merchant Marine Academy. She wore the standard blue uniform of a commercial communications officer and seemed to spend most of her time reading technical manuals and practicing standard procedures. "Any interesting traffic out there, Amy?" Jake asked as he walked over to her station. Amy shook her head. "Just the usual merchant ships and colonial transport vessels, Captain. There are a few mining operations in this sector, so we are getting some industrial communications, but nothing unusual." Jake nodded and returned to his captain's chair. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Everything looked normal and routine, just like it should. The Northern Star was supposed to be a simple cargo vessel, and that was exactly what it appeared to be. The ship's cargo holds contained what the manifest said they did: farming equipment, mining tools, construction supplies, and other basic materials needed by the frontier colonies. The paperwork was all in order, and their flight plan showed a direct route to deliver the goods to their assigned destinations. Jake had been in space for 15 years, starting as a young pilot in the Merchant Marine and working his way up to captain. His record showed steady promotion through various shipping companies, with no black marks or unusual incidents. He was known as a reliable captain who delivered his cargo on time and avoided trouble. Lisa had a similar background, having served on various cargo ships before joining the Northern Star's crew. Her record showed she was good at navigation and ship operations, with commendations for helping other vessels in distress. She was considered a solid officer who could be trusted with important responsibilities. Danny's background was in engineering, having worked on everything from small shuttles to large transport ships. He had a reputation for being able to fix any mechanical problem and keep old ships running long past their expected retirement dates. Several companies had tried to recruit him over the years, but he seemed to prefer working on smaller crews. Amy was the newest member of the crew, having graduated from the Communications Academy just 2 years ago. Her record showed excellent grades in all technical subjects, and high marks for professionalism and attention to detail. She had specifically requested assignment to frontier routes, saying she wanted to see the galaxy beyond the core worlds. The Northern Star continued its journey through the Kepler sector, following the established shipping lanes that connected the various colonies and mining operations. This part of space was known for its rich mineral deposits and fertile planets, making it attractive to both legitimate settlers and less savory characters looking for easy targets. Jake knew that pirate attacks had been increasing in this region over the past few months. Several cargo ships had been attacked and robbed, with their crews sometimes killed or left stranded on dead worlds. The authorities were working to increase patrols, but space was vast, and it was impossible to protect every ship on every route. Communication systems suddenly crackled to life with a distress signal. Amy quickly tuned in the transmission and put it on the main speakers. The voice was scratchy and filled with static, but the message was clear. "Mayday, Mayday, this is the cargo vessel Stellar Dawn. We have suffered catastrophic engine failure and are drifting in the Arcturus system. Our life support is failing, and we need immediate assistance. Any ship receiving this transmission, please respond." Jake looked at his crew and saw the concern on their faces. Helping ships in distress was not just a legal requirement, but a moral obligation in the dangerous depths of space. However, Jake also knew that distress signals were sometimes used as traps by pirates looking to lure unsuspecting vessels into ambushes. "Amy, can you get a fix on their location?" Jake asked. Amy worked at her console for a few minutes, running the signal through various filters and analysis programs. "I have them, Captain. They are about 4 light hours away in the Arcturus system. The signal is definitely coming from that location, and the voice patterns match standard human distress protocols." Lisa checked the navigation computer and plotted a course to the distressed vessel. "We can reach them in about 3 hours if we change course now, Captain. It will delay our delivery schedule by about 8 hours, but we can make up most of that time by pushing the engines a little harder on the final leg." Danny looked up from his engineering station. "The engines can handle the extra speed, Captain. We have plenty of reserve power if we need to push hard." Jake considered the situation carefully. The distress signals seemed genuine, and they were the closest ship that could provide assistance. However, something about the timing bothered him. The signal had come just as they were entering the most dangerous part of their route, in an area known for pirate activity. "What do you think?" "Lisa," Jake asked his second officer. Lisa studied the star charts and sensor readings carefully. "The location is isolated, Captain. There are no other ships in the immediate area, and it would be a good place for an ambush. However, if the distress is real, those people will die if we do not help them." Jake made his decision. "Set course for the Arcturus system, Lisa. Amy, acknowledge their distress signal and let them know we are coming. Danny, prepare the engines for maximum sustainable speed." The crew moved to carry out their orders with professional efficiency. The Northern Star changed course and began accelerating toward the source of the distress signal. On the surface, everything looked like a routine rescue mission carried out by a civilian cargo crew doing their duty. However, as the ship turned toward its new destination, subtle changes began to occur throughout the vessel. Systems that had appeared to be offline came online in silent mode. Hidden sensors began scanning space around them with much greater precision than any civilian ship should possess. Deep in the cargo holds, containers that appeared to hold farming equipment began running quiet diagnostic checks on much more sophisticated systems. Jake settled back in his captain's chair and watched the stars shift as they changed course. To any observer, the Northern Star looked like exactly what it claimed to be, a civilian cargo ship responding to a distress call. That appearance was very important, because Jake suspected They were about to find out just how good their disguise really was. Commander Vexstar stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the human cargo ship approach on the main display. The vessel looked exactly like what his intelligence reports had described: an old, worn freighter carrying minimal weapons and operated by a small civilian crew. It was perfect prey for his hunting pack. The Krex commander was tall and lean, with the gray-scaled skin and yellow eyes typical of his species. He had been leading raiding operations against human shipping for over 2 years, and his success rate was impressive. The humans seemed to send their cargo ships through space with little protection, making them easy targets for experienced predators like himself. Vexstar's pack consisted of 6 fast attack ships, each one designed for quick strikes against lightly defended targets. The Krex vessels were sleek and dark, with advanced cloaking systems that allowed them to approach their prey without being detected. They had been tracking human shipping patterns in this sector for months, identifying the most vulnerable routes. And the ships that used them, the Northern Star, had been on their target list for several weeks. Intelligence reports indicated it was a typical human cargo vessel with a crew of 4 and minimal defensive capabilities. The ship followed a predictable schedule, carrying supplies to the frontier colonies along routes that were poorly patrolled by human military forces. Status report. Vexstar ordered his tactical officer. The younger Krex officer consulted his instruments before responding. The human vessel is maintaining course and speed toward the false distress signal, Commander. They appear to have taken the bait completely. No signs that they suspect anything unusual. Vexstar nodded with satisfaction. The fake distress signal was a technique his pack had used successfully many times before. Humans seemed to have a weakness for helping others in trouble, even when it put their own ships at risk. This predictable behavior made them easy to manipulate and trap. Weapons status, Vexstar asked his weapons officer. All systems ready, Commander. We can disable their engines and communications with the first volley, then board them before they can send any distress signals of their own. The Krex had perfected their attack pattern through many successful raids. They would decloak around their target, disable its key systems with precisely aimed shots, then board the vessel to secure the cargo and crew. Human-civilian crews usually surrendered quickly when faced with superior firepower and trained warriors. Vexstar had studied human psychology and tactics extensively. The species seemed to divide their roles clearly between military and civilian personnel. Their cargo ship crews were trained for commerce and basic ship operations, not combat. When faced with professional warriors, they typically tried to negotiate or surrender rather than fight. Communications. Send the standard surrender demand once we decloak. Make it clear that resistance will result in the destruction of their vessel. The communications officer acknowledged the order and prepared the message that Vexstar's pack had used many times before. It was designed to create fear and convince the humans that immediate surrender was their only option for survival. Northern Star continued its approach toward the false distress signal, showing no signs of suspicion or caution. The human ship's sensors appeared to be standard civilian equipment with limited range and resolution. They had not detected the cloaked Krex vessels positioned around their route. Boarding parties. Prepare for action. Vexstar ordered over the ship's communication system. Throughout his flagship and the other vessels in his pack, Krex warriors began preparing their equipment and weapons. They wore advanced combat armor and carried energy weapons designed to disable rather than kill, since live prisoners were often more valuable than dead ones. The boarding procedures had been practiced many times and could be executed quickly and efficiently. Vexstar reviewed the intelligence file on the Northern Star one more time. The ship's captain was listed as Jake Morrison, a former military pilot who had been flying civilian cargo runs for several years. His record showed no unusual incidents or heroic actions, just steady service as a merchant captain. The rest of the crew appeared equally unremarkable. "Distance to target?" Vextar asked. 50,000 kilometers in closing, Commander. "They are well within our optimal engagement range." Vextar smiled, showing the sharp teeth that marked him as a natural predator. This would be another easy victory for his pack, adding to their reputation and bringing valuable cargo and intelligence back to the Krex Dominion. The humans would learn once again that their shipping was vulnerable to superior Krex tactics and technology. "All ships prepare to decloak on my signal. Execute attack pattern 7. The 5 other vessels in Vextar's pack acknowledged the order and moved into their assigned positions around the Northern Star. Attack pattern 7 was designed to surround the target completely, cutting off any possible escape routes, while minimizing the risk to the attacking ships. Vextar watched the tactical display as his ships moved into position. The human cargo vessel continued on its course, apparently unaware that it was flying directly into a carefully prepared trap. Everything was proceeding exactly according to plan. "Sir, the human vessel is transmitting," the communications officer reported. "Put it on the main screen," Vextar ordered. The image of a human male appeared on the display. He appeared to be middle-aged with brown hair and calm blue eyes. His uniform marked him as the ship's captain, and he looked tired but alert. This matched the profile of Jake Morrison perfectly. "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Morrison of the cargo ship Northern Star. We are responding to a distress signal in this area. If you are experiencing difficulties, we stand ready to provide assistance." Vextar almost laughed at the humans' naivety. Even now, when they were clearly flying into an ambush, the humans were offering to help. This predictable behavior was exactly why his pack had been so successful against their shipping. "Execute," Vextar commanded. All 6 Krex vessels dropped their cloaking fields simultaneously, appearing around the Northern Star in perfect formation. The human ship was surrounded completely, with nowhere to run and no chance at escape. Vextar's flagship positioned itself directly in front of the cargo vessel, its weapons trained on the bridge. "Human vessel, you are surrounded and outgunned." Vextar transmitted. "Power down your engines and weapons immediately. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your ship and the death of your crew." Vextar expected to see fear and panic on the human captain's face. Instead, Morrison's expression remained calm and thoughtful, as if he was considering options rather than preparing to surrender. This was unusual, but not unprecedented. Some humans tried to negotiate or delay before accepting the inevitable. "I repeat, power down immediately, or we will open fire." Vextar transmitted again, adding more menace to his voice. The human captain appeared to be consulting with his crew off-screen. Vextar could hear muffled voices in the background, but the words were unclear. After a few moments, Morrison turned back to face the camera. "Very well, we will comply with your demands," Morrison said. "We are powering down our engines and weapons now. Please do not fire on our ship." The tactical display showed the Northern Star's engines shutting down and its minimal defensive systems going offline. The human ship drifted to a stop, apparently, helpless and at the mercy of Vextar's pack. Everything was proceeding exactly as it should. "Boarding Party Alpha, prepare to dock with the human vessel," Vextar ordered. "Secure the bridge and engine room first, then sweep the rest of the ship for crew and cargo." The lead boarding ship moved closer to the Northern Star and extended its docking tube toward the cargo vessel's main airlock. The procedure was routine and had been carried out successfully dozens of times before. Within minutes, Krex warriors would be aboard the human ship and in control of the situation. Vextar watched with satisfaction as the docking tube connected with the Northern Star's hull. His warriors would find the usual terrified civilian crew and cargo holds full of valuable supplies. Another successful raid was about to be completed, adding to his pack's impressive record of victories against human shipping. However, as the boarding party prepared to enter the human vessel, Vextar noticed something unusual on his tactical display. The Northern Star's power signature was not quite what he expected from a ship that had supposedly shut down all non-essential systems. There seemed to be more energy flowing through the vessel than a simple life support system would require. Before Vextar could investigate this anomaly further, his boarding party leader reported that they were ready to enter the human ship. The commander pushed his concerns aside, attributing the unusual readings to quirks in human technology that his sensors might not interpret correctly. "Proceed with boarding," Vextar ordered, sealing the fate of his pack. The first Krex warrior stepped through the airlock of the Northern Star and immediately knew something was wrong. The corridor he entered was not the cramped, cluttered passageway typical of a civilian cargo ship. Instead, it was clean, well lit, and showed signs of military-grade construction. The walls were reinforced, and the lighting had the harsh, efficient quality found on warships rather than merchant vessels dot behind him. 5 more Krex warriors entered the ship, their weapons ready and senses alert. They had boarded dozens of human cargo ships before, and this one felt different from the moment they set foot inside. The air itself seemed charged with tension, as if the ship was waiting for something to happen. Squad leader Caxter led the boarding party deeper into the ship, following the route his briefings had indicated would take them to the bridge. However, the layout was not quite what the intelligence reports had suggested. There were additional corridors and sealed doorways that did not appear on any civilian ship schematics they had studied. "Command, this is boarding party Alpha," Caxter reported through his communicator. "We have entered the human vessel, but the internal configuration does not match our intelligence reports. The ship appears to have been modified extensively." On his flagship, Commander Vextar received the report with growing concern. His tactical display still showed the Northern Star as a powerless cargo vessel, but the reports from his boarding party suggested something was not right. The ship's internal structure should have been standard for its class and age. "Continue to the bridge and secure the human crew," Vextar ordered. "We will sort out the details once we have control of the situation." Caxter acknowledged the order and led his warriors forward through the ship's corridors. They moved with practiced caution, weapons ready for any sign of resistance. However, the ship seemed empty and quiet, with no signs of the human crew they expected to encounter. As they rounded a corner, the Krex warriors found themselves face to face with a human male standing calmly in the middle of the corridor. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing what appeared to be standard work clothes. However, his posture and alertness suggested military training that went far beyond civilian standards. "Good afternoon," the human said in a conversational tone. "I am Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez. I believe you are looking for our bridge." Caxto raised his weapon and pointed it at the human. "You will surrender immediately and direct us to your ship's command center. Any resistance will result in your death." Danny smiled and shook his head slowly. "I am afraid that will not be possible. You see, this ship is not quite what you think it is, and neither are we." Before Caxter could respond, panels in the corridor walls suddenly slid open, revealing armed humans in military-grade combat gear. The Krex warriors found themselves surrounded by professional soldiers whose movements and equipment spoke of extensive training and experience. "Drop your weapons," a female voice commanded from behind them. The Krex warriors spun around to see a human woman in full combat armor, her weapon trained on them with steady precision. Her face was calm and professional, showing none of the fear or panic they expected from civilian crew members. This was clearly a trained soldier, not a merchant officer. "I am Lieutenant Commander Lisa Grant," the woman said. "You are now prisoners of the Human Colonial Intelligence Service. Your weapons and equipment will be confiscated, and you will be held according to the military protocols governing captured enemy combatants." Caxter realized that his squad had walked directly into a trap, but he was still confused about how. A civilian cargo ship could be crewed by military personnel. His intelligence reports had been very specific about the Northern Star's status and crew composition. "This is impossible," Caxter said. "You are civilian merchants, not military personnel. Our intelligence clearly identified this vessel as a cargo ship with a civilian crew." Lisa Grant smiled coldly. "Your intelligence was designed to be wrong. This ship has been operating as a merchant vessel for 3 years, building exactly the profile your species would find attractive. We have been waiting for predators like you to take the bait." On the bridge of the Northern Star, Captain Jake Morrison was coordinating the capture of the boarding party while monitoring the Krek ships surrounding his vessel. The aliens had made exactly the mistake he had been hoping for, sending a boarding party onto a ship they did not understand. Amy Patterson sat at her communication station, but her equipment bore no resemblance to standard merchant communications gear. Instead, she operated a sophisticated electronic warfare suite capable of intercepting and analyzing alien communications, jamming enemy systems, and conducting cyber attacks against hostile vessels. "Captain, I have successfully infiltrated the command ship's communication system," Amy reported. "The Krek's commander is trying to contact his boarding party, but I am blocking all transmissions. He knows something is wrong, but cannot determine what has happened." Jake nodded and moved to the tactical station, where displays showed the positions and status of all 6 Krek's vessels. The information was far more detailed and accurate than any civilian ship could obtain, providing precise data on their weapons, shields, and internal systems. "Danny, how are our guests doing?" Jake asked through the ship's internal communication system. Danny's voice came back immediately. "All 6 Krek's warriors are secured, Captain. They walked right into our trap and never had a chance to resist. Lisa is processing them now, according to intelligence protocols." The cargo holds of the Northern Star were indeed filled with containers labeled as farming equipment and mining tools. However, beneath the carefully constructed camouflage lay sophisticated intelligence-gathering equipment, advanced sensors, and weapon systems that would have been impressive on a military cruiser. The ship's apparent age and wear were carefully maintained illusions. The hull scratches and faded paint concealed advanced armor plating and defensive systems. The seemingly outdated engines were actually state-of-the-art propulsion units capable of performance far exceeding any civilian vessel. Jake Morrison was not just a former military pilot turned merchant captain. He was a decorated intelligence officer with extensive experience in deep space reconnaissance and covert operations. His official records showed a simple transition to civilian life, but his real assignment was far more complex and dangerous. Lisa Grant had commanded special operations units during the recent border wars, leading missions against alien raiders and hostile forces. Her expertise in combat operations and prisoner handling made her perfectly suited for the current situation. Danny Rodriguez was not just a skilled engineer, but a specialist in alien technology and electronic warfare. His modifications to the Northern Star included systems designed specifically to counter Krek's weapons and tactics, based on months of careful study and preparation. Amy Patterson was the youngest member of the crew, but also one of the most highly trained. Her specialization in xenolinguistics and electronic warfare had made her invaluable in developing countermeasures against Krek's communication and computer systems. The Northern Star was one of several intelligence vessels operating in the frontier regions designed to appear as vulnerable civilian targets while actually serving as sophisticated traps for alien raiders. The operation had been planned for over a year, with each crew member chosen for their specific skills and experience. "Amy, what is the status of the Krex fleet?" Jake asked. Amy studied her displays carefully before responding. "The command ship is trying to re-establish contact with the boarding party, but I'm successfully blocking all communication attempts. The other 5 vessels are maintaining position, but showing signs of increased alert status. They know something is wrong, but have not yet determined the nature of the threat." Jake moved to the captain's chair and activated the ship's internal communication system. "All stations, this is the captain. We have successfully captured the boarding party and are ready to proceed to Phase 2 of the operation. Prepare to reveal our true capabilities." Throughout the ship, systems that had been hidden or disguised began coming online. Weapon ports opened in what had appeared to be cargo sections. Advanced sensors emerged from concealed compartments. The Northern Star began to transform from an apparently helpless cargo vessel into a formidable warship dot in the detention area. Caxter watched in amazement as the ship around him revealed its true nature. The humans had created a perfect deception, building a trap that his species had walked into without any suspicion. The implications were staggering. "How long have you been planning this?" Caxter asked Lisa Grant. Lisa checked her equipment and looked back at the captured Krex warrior. "We have been tracking your pack for 3 months, learning your tactics and patterns. This ship has been operating as bait for over a year, waiting for predators like you to reveal yourselves." The revelation hit Caxter like a physical blow. His pack had not stumbled upon an easy target, but had instead attacked a sophisticated intelligence operation designed specifically to trap and destroy Krex raiders. Everything they thought they knew about human civilian shipping had been carefully constructed misinformation. "Your commander is about to learn a very hard lesson about underestimating human capabilities," Lisa continued. Commander Vextar stared at his tactical display in growing alarm as his sensors detected massive changes occurring aboard the Northern Star. What had appeared to be a powerless cargo vessel was suddenly showing energy signatures that rivaled his own flagship. Weapon systems were coming online throughout the human ship, emerging from concealment with frightening speed and precision. "Tactical report?" Vextar demanded, his voice sharp with tension. The tactical officer worked frantically at his console, trying to make sense of the readings flooding his instruments. "Commander, the human vessel is deploying weapon systems that do not appear in any of our intelligence files. I am detecting torpedo launchers, particle beam arrays, and defensive systems that exceed the capabilities of some military cruisers." Vextar felt ice forming in his stomach as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. His pack had not attacked a helpless merchant vessel, but had instead walked directly into a carefully prepared trap. The humans had been waiting for them, planning this encounter for months or perhaps years. "Communications, raise the boarding party immediately," Vextar ordered. The communications officer worked at his station for several minutes before looking up with a confused expression. "Sir, I cannot establish contact with boarding party Alpha. All communication frequencies are being jammed by sophisticated countermeasures originating from the human ship." On the Northern Star, Amy Patterson monitored the increasingly frantic communications attempts from the Krex flagship while simultaneously launching a comprehensive electronic warfare attack against all 6 alien vessels. Her equipment included systems designed specifically to exploit weaknesses in Krex technology that had been identified through months of intelligence gathering. "Captain, I have successfully penetrated the command ship's computer network," Amy reported. "I am uploading a virus designed to disrupt their weapons targeting systems and create false sensor readings throughout their fleet." Jake Morrison watched the tactical display as the Krex ships began showing signs of system failures and confusion. The aliens were discovering that their sophisticated warships were vulnerable to human cyber warfare techniques they had never encountered before. Danny, bring the main engines online and prepare for combat maneuvers, Jake ordered. Deep in the engineering section, Danny Rodriguez activated systems that transformed the Northern Star from an apparently aging cargo vessel into a ship capable of outrunning and outfighting most military vessels in this sector of space. The engines that had seemed barely adequate for civilian cargo runs were actually advanced military units with performance characteristics that would shock the Krex commanders. Engines online, Captain, Danny reported. All systems are showing green across the board. We have full power and maneuverability. The Northern Star began to move with a grace and speed that was impossible for any civilian cargo ship. Its acceleration curve and maneuvering capabilities immediately identified it as a military vessel of advanced design, probably incorporating technology that was years ahead of anything the Krex had encountered. Commander Vexstar watched in horror as the human ship began to circle his formation with speed and agility that his own vessels could not match. The Northern Star was not just armed like a warship. It moved like one, demonstrating capabilities that exceeded his best estimates of human technology. All ships, open fire on the human vessel, Vexstar commanded. Destroy it immediately before it can complete whatever attack it is planning. The 5 escort vessels in his pack opened fire with their primary weapons, sending streams of energy toward the Northern Star. However, their targeting systems had been compromised by Amy Patterson's cyber attack, and most of their shots missed their target completely. The few hits that connected were absorbed by defensive shields that should not have existed on any cargo ship. Jake Morrison smiled grimly as he watched the alien weapons fire pass harmlessly around his ship. The Northern Star's defensive systems had been designed specifically to counter Krex weapons technology, using intelligence gathered from previous encounters and captured equipment. Lisa, take us to combat stations, Jake ordered. Lisa Grant moved to the weapons control station and began bringing the Northern Star's hidden arsenal online. Concealed weapon ports opened throughout the ship's hull, revealing torpedo launchers and energy weapons that had been completely invisible during the vessel's merchant disguise. Weapons ready, Captain, Lisa reported. I have targeting solutions on all 6 Krex vessels. Recommend we disable their engines and weapons first, then capture the survivors for intelligence purposes. Jake nodded and settled into his command chair. Engage at will, Commander Grant. Let them see what happens when they underestimate human capabilities. The Northern Star's first volley was devastatingly accurate. Torpedo spreads and particle beam strikes hit 3 of the Krex escort vessels simultaneously, disabling their propulsion systems and knocking out their primary weapons. The aliens had never faced coordinated attacks of such precision and power from what they had believed was a civilian target. Vexstar's flagship shuddered as secondary explosions rocked the nearest escort vessel. His tactical officer was reporting massive system failures throughout the pack, with ships losing power and weapons at an alarming rate. The human vessel was systematically dismantling his force with a level of tactical skill that exceeded anything in his experience. Sir, the humans are using some kind of advanced jamming system, the tactical officer reported. Our targeting computers cannot lock onto their ship, and our weapons are firing at false sensor images. They appear to have detailed knowledge of our technology and countermeasures designed specifically for our systems. Vexstar realized that this was not a random encounter, but a carefully planned operation. The humans had been studying Krex technology and tactics, preparing countermeasures and weapons designed to exploit their weaknesses. His pack was being destroyed by an enemy that knew them better than they knew themselves. The Northern Star continued its attack with methodical precision. Lisa Grant's targeting was flawless, each shot carefully placed to disable rather than destroy. The goal was clearly to capture the Krex vessels and their crews intact, suggesting that this was an intelligence operation rather than a simple military engagement. "Danny, how are our power levels?" Jake asked. "Running at about 30% of maximum capacity, Captain," Danny replied. "These Krex ships are not providing much of a challenge for our systems. I could probably handle twice as many targets without straining our capabilities." Amy Patterson looked up from her electronic warfare station with satisfaction. "Captain, I have successfully taken control of the navigation systems on 2 of the escort vessels. They are now flying in circles and cannot coordinate their attacks." With the rest of the fleet, Jake watched as the Krex formation collapsed into chaos. Ships were firing at empty space, flying erratic courses, and reporting system failures throughout their fleets. The Northern Star moved through the confusion like a predator among helpless prey, striking precisely and efficiently. Commander Vextar tried desperately to regain control of the situation, but his communications were jammed, his sensors were compromised, and his weapons could not find their target. The human ship seemed to anticipate every move his remaining vessels made, staying ahead of their attacks while systematically destroying their ability to fight. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the human vessel," the communications officer reported. "Put it on the main screen," Vextar ordered. The image of Captain Jake Morrison appeared on the display, but he was no longer wearing civilian clothing. Instead, he wore the uniform of a human colonial intelligence officer, complete with rank insignia and service decorations that marked him as a veteran of multiple campaigns. "Commander Vextar, this is Captain Morrison of the intelligence vessel." "Northern Star," Jake said in a calm, professional tone. "Your pack has been neutralized and your boarding party captured. I am offering you one opportunity to surrender your remaining vessels and crews. If you refuse, we will continue our attack until all your ships are disabled or destroyed." Vextar stared at the human officer and felt the full weight of his defeat. His pack had been lured into attacking what they thought was easy prey, only to discover that they had walked into a trap prepared by professional soldiers with superior technology and detailed knowledge of Krex capabilities. "How long have you been planning this?" Vextar asked. Jake's expression remained neutral. "Long enough to ensure that raids against human shipping in this sector will become extremely expensive for your people. Your pack was specifically targeted because of your success rate against civilian vessels. We wanted to send a clear message to the Krex Dominion." The remaining Krex vessels were now completely disabled, their crews struggling with system failures and compromised equipment. The Northern Star had accomplished in less than 30 minutes what an entire fleet of conventional warships might have taken hours to achieve. "What are your terms?" Vextar asked, knowing he had no choice but to surrender. "Complete surrender of all vessels and crews," Jake replied. "You will be processed according to human colonial military protocols and eventually repatriated to Krex space with a message for your superiors." The aftermath of the battle was swift and efficient. Within 2 hours of Commander Vextar's surrender, all 6 Krex vessels had been secured and their crews transferred to detention facilities aboard human ships that had appeared seemingly from nowhere. The Northern Star had not been operating alone, but as part of a carefully coordinated intelligence operation that involved multiple vessels and hundreds of personnel. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Northern Star and watched as the last of the Krex prisoners were processed. The operation had been a complete success, exceeding even the most optimistic projections of the mission planners. Not only had they captured an entire raiding pack, but they had done so without suffering any casualties or significant damage to their own forces. Admiral Sarah Brooks materialized on the main screen from her flagship, the heavy cruiser Valiant Dawn. She was a stern woman in her 50s, with graying hair and the bearing of someone who had spent decades in military service. Her expression showed satisfaction with the mission's outcome, but also the weight of larger strategic considerations. "Excellent work, Captain Morrison," Admiral Brooks said. "The intelligence value of this operation cannot be overstated. We now have detailed information about Krek's technology, tactics, and operational procedures that will help us protect human shipping throughout this entire sector." Jake nodded and moved to his command chair. "Thank you, Admiral." The crew performed flawlessly throughout the operation. I recommend all personnel for commendation, particularly Commander Grant's tactical coordination and Officer Patterson's electronic warfare operations. Lisa Grant looked up from the tactical station, where she was compiling the final battle reports. The engagement had been so one-sided that it hardly qualified as a battle, more like a demonstration of superior preparation and technology. The Kreks had never had a real chance once they committed to boarding the Northern Star. "Admiral, what are our orders regarding the prisoners?" Lisa asked. Admiral Brooks consulted something off-screen before responding. "They will be held according to military protocols while we extract intelligence information. Eventually, they will be repatriated to Krek space with a very specific message for their superiors." Danny Rodriguez joined the conversation from the engineering station. "Admiral, the Krek's technology is interesting, but not particularly advanced. Compared to our current systems, their ships rely heavily on speed and stealth rather than superior firepower or defensive capabilities. I think we can develop effective countermeasures for their entire fleet based on what we captured today." Amy Patterson had been monitoring Krek's communications throughout the surrounding star systems since the battle ended. Her equipment allowed her to intercept and analyze alien transmissions across a much wider area than any civilian ship could. Cover, providing valuable intelligence about enemy movements and intentions. "Admiral, I am detecting increased Krek's communication traffic in adjacent sectors," Amy reported. "It appears that news of this engagement is already spreading through their command structure. Several raiding packs have changed course away from human shipping lanes." Admiral Brooks smiled grimly. "That is exactly the reaction we were hoping for. Fear can be more effective than firepower when it comes to protecting our civilian shipping." The Northern Star had been just one part of Operation Merchant Shield, a comprehensive intelligence program designed to eliminate the threat of alien raiders in the frontier regions. Similar operations were being conducted throughout human space, using disguised intelligence vessels to lure predators into carefully prepared traps. Jake reviewed the mission files on his command screen and saw the scope of the larger operation. Dozens of ships like the Northern Star were operating as apparent civilian targets while actually serving as sophisticated hunter-killers. The program represented the largest intelligence operation in human history, involving thousands of personnel and advanced technology that most alien species had never encountered. "Captain, we are receiving a priority transmission from Colonial Intelligence Headquarters," Amy announced. "Put it through to my ready room," Jake ordered. "Admiral, if you will excuse me." Jake entered his private office adjacent to the bridge and activated the secure communication system. The image of Director Helen Carter appeared on the screen, her expression serious but pleased. As head of human colonial intelligence, she had overall responsibility for operations like Merchant Shield. "Captain Morrison, congratulations on a more successful mission," Director Carter said. "The intelligence gathered from this operation will be invaluable for future defensive operations. However, I have new orders for you and your crew." Jake settled into his chair and waited for the details. Deep space intelligence operations were rarely simple, and he suspected that the capture of Vexstar S-Pac was only the beginning of a larger mission. "The Krex prisoners have provided information about a major staging area in the Proxima sector," Director Carter continued. "We believe they are planning a large-scale offensive against our colonial shipping routes. Your mission is to infiltrate this staging area and gather detailed intelligence about their intentions and capabilities. Jake considered the implications of such a mission. Operating in enemy-controlled space would be far more dangerous than the trap they had just sprung, requiring even more sophisticated deception and preparation. However, it was exactly the kind of operation the Northern Star had been designed to conduct. "What is our cover for this mission?" Jake asked. "The Northern Star will resume its merchant identity and carry a cargo of rare minerals that the Kreks are known to value highly. Intelligence suggests they will attempt to capture rather than destroy a ship carrying such valuable materials, giving you an opportunity to get close to their command structure." Director Carter transmitted the detailed mission parameters to Jake's secure terminal. The operation would require the Northern Star to travel deep into Krek space and maintain its civilian disguise while gathering intelligence on military installations that were heavily defended and constantly patrolled. "Time frame?" Jake asked. "You will depart in 72 hours after completing prisoner transfers and equipment upgrades. This mission has the highest priority classification and the full support of Colonial Command." Jake acknowledged the orders and returned to the bridge where his crew was completing the final phases of their current operation. The Krek's vessels had been thoroughly searched and their technology cataloged by human intelligence specialists. The prisoners had been processed and were being prepared for transfer to specialized interrogation facilities. "Crew, we have new orders," Jake announced. "Prepare for departure in 72 hours. We will be resuming merchant operations in the Proxima sector." Lisa Grant looked up from her station with interest. "Deep cover operation, Captain?" "The deepest," Jake confirmed. "We will be operating in enemy space for an extended period, gathering intelligence on Krek's military preparations. This will be significantly more dangerous than anything we have done before." Danny Rodriguez grinned and returned to his engineering console. "Sounds like we will need to make some modifications to our systems. If we are going into Krek space, we will need even better disguises and more sophisticated countermeasures." Amy Patterson was already studying the communication protocols used in Krek space, preparing to monitor and intercept enemy transmissions from much closer range than had ever been attempted before. The risks were enormous, but so was the potential intelligence value. As the Northern Star prepared for its next mission, Admiral Brooks transmitted a final message to Jake's personal communicator. "Captain, the success of today's operation has exceeded all expectations. You and your crew have proven that human intelligence capabilities are far more advanced than our enemies realize. The message you sent today will protect thousands of civilian lives throughout the frontier regions." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew and felt pride in their accomplishment. They had taken a significant step toward ending the threat of alien raiders against human shipping, but the war was far from over. The Krek's Dominion and other hostile species would adapt to these new realities, requiring constant vigilance and innovation from human intelligence forces. The Northern Star completed its prisoner transfers and began preparing for departure. In 72 hours, it would once again become a seemingly helpless cargo vessel carrying valuable cargo through dangerous space. However, any aliens who mistook them for easy prey would discover the same harsh lesson that Commander Vextar and his pack had learned. Humanity had been underestimated by its enemies for the last time. The frontier regions were under the protection of guardians who appeared harmless but possessed the training, technology, and determination to defend human civilization against any threat. The Northern Star and ships like her would continue their silent war, ensuring that human expansion into the galaxy would proceed under the protection of warriors who fought from the shadows.